Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Amanda. Today I have some quick and easy meal ideas for you and a bonus dessert. If you enjoy content like this, I'd love it if you would join my YouTube family by subscribing. And if you're excited for another What's for Dinner video, make sure to hit that like button. Now, let's get to it. So first up, we have Taco Bell at home, kind of a copycat double-decker taco recipe. So in a prior video, I showed y'all how I cook all my ground beef up and freeze it. So I actually thawed this a little in the microwave, and I will link that video below if y'all want to go back and watch that. And I've got that in the skillet, and then I'm going to add a packet of taco seasoning. And the taco seasoning just calls for 3/4 a cup of water. So I'm going to add that in. And once you add your water in, you're just going to kind of over like a medium heat. You're just going to bring that to a boil and let it boil for a little bit. You want most of the liquid to kind of evaporate from that so that it's not real soupy or anything like that, but you know, it's good to put in tacos, but it has all that good seasoning in it. And you can definitely make your own taco seasoning. I do that sometimes too. This is just what I use this night. So once that's done, I've got that kind of sitting to the side, and then I'm going to get started on just heating up a can of refried beans. So I'm putting those in there, and I'm just going to bring those to kind of a bubble to make sure they're good and heated well. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I have always loved the double-decker tacos at Taco Bell, and my husband, that's like his favorite thing at Taco Bell. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they took those off last year, so he was, you know, very disappointed when they took those off, and I don't think you can get them anymore. But they're easy to make at home, so I'm going to show you how to do that, and it's so easy, especially if you have that meat already cooked up. So I've just got some plain flour tortillas. You get kind of, the bag didn't say what size these are, but they're kind of smaller, probably about the same size as a tostada kind of shape to it. So I'm just putting some of the refried beans there and spreading those around and getting that ready to place that taco on there. Now, like I said, this comes together so easy, especially if you've got that meat already in the freezer and you just pull that out and simply heat that up with the taco seasoning. You could even do it from frozen too. I just heated it in the microwave a little bit. But it's like goes together so fast. So I've got the taco shell sitting on here. I'm just going to add a little bit of the taco meat to it. And of course, that's just up to you, however much you like in there. And then once I get that in there, I'm going to just top it with some shredded cheese. Now you could also make this a supreme by adding like chopped tomatoes and sour cream. You could also just really put whatever you want on there. Lettuce, salsa. I did eat salsa and sour cream on the side with mine. And I meant to cut up some lettuce, but didn't end up having a chance to do that before I made these. So that would also be really good on it. So definitely make it your own, customize it. That was a neat thing I've always liked about Taco Bell too, is they're really good about customizing things. So, of course now, unfortunately, we can't get the double deckers there, but, so these were so good. And I'll be honest with you, they tasted definitely at least as good as Taco Bell, but I really think they tasted better. So we were really happy with how they turned out. I highly recommend these. So very quick, so very easy, and so just delicious. So I can't recommend them enough. So next up, we have barbecue pork with oven baked hash browns. So I'm making the hash browns first. I'm getting those together. The pork actually was in the freezer I pulled out, but I've got a package of frozen shredded hash browns that I've thawed, and I'm adding in 2 large eggs that I've just whisked together, then a cup of shredded cheddar cheese, and now we're going to add the seasonings. Now the recipe called for cumin, thyme, and garlic powder, but I just decided I didn't really want the cumin flavor this night, so I did garlic powder, onion powder, and all-purpose seasoning. So you could definitely vary these seasonings up to however you'd like, change it up depending on what you're serving it with. So that makes it pretty versatile. Now, I first saw these on Taylor Elmore's channel. I'll link her video down below if you want to go get the recipe. When I saw her make those, I was just like, wow, this is so cool to be able to bake them in the oven, but yet them turn out more like hash browns. So I was so excited to try this recipe, and we were really happy with it. We will definitely be making it again. So once I get the seasonings in there, I'm actually just going to mix that together. Once that's mixed well, I'll add in a 1/2 cup of melted butter, The recipe called for unsalted. I'm sure if you want to leave salt out and you salted, that would be fine too. It's just whichever you'd prefer. And then just mix that together well. I've got a sheet pan here lined with parchment paper that I'm going to get everything out onto and just spread it as evenly as you can on there. Now this bakes at 400 degrees for 40 minutes. And you just, once it gets done, you can cut it into squares and serve it. This really turned out so well. It's just, I was really surprised. And I'm kind of curious if I could leave the eggs out even. I wonder what the eggs do in this recipe. I decided also to add a little black pepper here because I started thinking it would probably taste good on hash browns because I always like a little bit of pepper on hash browns. It was just definitely so handy though to be able to bake these hash browns while I did other things on the stove. And so I really appreciated the convenience of that. We'll definitely use this for breakfast as well sometime. This night was for dinner. But these look so good. You could even, I believe that Taylor broiled them a little bit to get them a little more crispy on the top. So you definitely could do that as well. They were just so good. I highly recommend this recipe. And like I said, I'll link her channel below so that you can go catch that recipe from her. But it was very delicious. I'm so glad we tried it. So this is the plate. I've got barbecue pork, like I said, that I pulled out of the freezer. And then I just made some green beans and we just had a roll with it along with the potatoes. And this was a delicious dinner. I'm trying to use up some of my stuff in my freezer. So that was handy to have that pork in there and just pull that out to serve with this. So next up, I've got Copycat CHARLEY's pepper steak soup. This soup is so good. And I'll have that recipe linked below in the description. But I've got 4 tablespoons of butter that I'm just going to melt. And then I kind of made a few changes to the recipe. It called for like specific amounts of green peppers and things like that. I kind of eyeballed that because I like a lot of veggies in any soup I have like that. These green peppers were actually frozen, so I went ahead and thawed them a little bit in the microwave. So I've added some green peppers, some onions, some chopped celery. And you're just going to saute that until all that softens and gets a little, kind of starting to cook a little. And then once it's kind of softened and gotten translucent, you're going to add 4 tablespoons of flour and then cook that for a couple of minutes just to get that raw flour taste out. Now you're going to add your beef broth. Now the recipe calls for beef bouillon cubes and water, but I didn't have any, so I went ahead and just used beef broth, and that worked great. We didn't have any problems with it at all. And that was a total of 5 cups in there. So once you get all that mixed well together, you're just going to let that come up to a boil. Once it's boiled for just a little bit, you're going to add a 1/2 cup of half and half to it. And then stir that up well. The recipe calls for cayenne pepper and black pepper to taste. So I just kind of eyeballed that. And, if you like it more spicy, you can definitely add more of each of those. It really just varies by personal taste and everything. So I've got those going in there. Now, the recipe called for cooked potatoes. So this is actually a good recipe, if you have stuff left over from things. I did not, so I went ahead and boiled a few potatoes, and I'm just scooping those in there and trying to make sure, because I didn't measure them. I just cut up several. I think for the most part with soups, you can eyeball stuff a lot more easier than you can with some recipes. So I just kind of got enough in there to my liking. Then you're going to let that cook for a little bit longer with the steak in it as well. So we're going to let it simmer and kind of all the flavors meld together until it's, about 15-20 minutes. And then once that's done, you're actually going to make up a cornstarch slurry. Now the recipe called for a little more cornstarch and water than I used because it talked about it being pretty thick, and I didn't really want it so super thick, so I used a little less. So definitely be mindful of that if you make this recipe, that you might want to cut that cornstarch back if you don't want it's so thick. And this was perfect for me. Like, I really enjoyed the thickness. It was just right. So once you get that cornstarch slurry in there, you're just going to let it cook for a little bit longer to let it thicken up. I was definitely so impressed with this recipe. It tasted so much like CHARLEY's soup. All I was missing was the CHARLEY's rolls. If I'd had that, it would have been a perfect combination. This was very good. I cannot wait to make it again. So tasty. Great soup recipe for sure. Now next up we have KORV Stroganoff. This is a little different, and It might seem a little odd at first as far as the ingredients, as far as, you know, what you might think it will taste like, but it is much better than you would think. So this is actually bologna. It's boar's head bologna, and I'm just cutting that into strips. So my son had been looking into Sweden, and he's been reading about it, and he come across this, you know, recipe for Krov Stroganoff, and he wanted to see if there was any way we could make it. It turns out that you can't get the sausage they use for it in the United States. However, from the Googling I did, I found that they said that boar's head pork and beef bologna was the best substitute. So that's what I've got. I actually doubled this recipe. We had made it once before, but I didn't film it, and my son just really, really liked it. So if you like bologna, you probably will like this. It definitely surprised me in the flavoring. Like I didn't have too high hopes at first, and it actually had really good flavor to it. So I definitely think it was a fun thing to try for him being interested in Sweden. You know, I know that it's probably not completely authentic, obviously, since we can't find all the ingredients. And I did my best to sub ingredients based on the recipe I found, just based on what I, you know, had on hand and what, you know, we have available, like with the bologna instead. But I've just got some sliced onion going in here. You're just going to saute the onion until it's kind of soft and translucent. I love this fork. I saw Jen Chapin use one like this, and I happened to find this at Kohl's. But I really like it. It really seemed to work really well with separating that onion out any like that I needed to, because sometimes they like to stick together. So now that our onions are soft and translucent, I've added the bologna in here. You're just going to cook it until some of the parts start to kind of brown and get really, you know, thoroughly heated through. So now the recipe calls for canned chopped tomatoes. I didn't have those on hand, so I thought that the tomato sauce would work as well. So I've got tomato sauce going in here. It also calls for ketchup, which I thought was an interesting ingredient, but it really works. Like that was what was like, you don't pick up a ketchup taste once it cooks, so it was kind of interesting. But so I've got the ketchup going in here. Now once you get both of these in here, you're going to cook it for a couple of minutes. And once it's cooked for a couple minutes, you kind of melded those flavors together, you're just going to add in some cream. Now I didn't have like heavy cream or anything, so I used half and half in it, and that worked out perfect. So once you add that half and half in there, you're just going to let it cook a couple more minutes. Make sure to stir it really well and get it good and combined and everything together. You can also add salt and pepper to taste in this, so I added a little bit of each. You could really probably, once you try this, you know, change up some spices, add some more things to it. Obviously it wouldn't necessarily be as close to the real thing probably if you start playing with it a little bit, but it, you know, you definitely could experiment it. You know, I always think it's good to experiment with flavors like that. So this recipe really surprised me. I really did not expect it to taste good. You know, just with the bologna in there, I wasn't sure about it. And we really thought this really had good flavor to it. My son absolutely loves it now. So we're not fixing it a whole lot because of the fact that it does have bologna in it. And I know that's not the healthiest, but it's something neat. And especially I encourage him to always, like, you know, explore other cultures. And that was fun for him to learn more about Sweden. And, you know, I was encouraged that he wanted to make something, so I wanted to do that for him. Now next up we have chocolate no-bake cookies. I think just about everybody's probably had these in their life at some point or other. My husband is actually the one making these this night. He likes to do these. He's kind of learned the recipe and enjoys making them. Now in this saucepan I've got a stick of butter and 2 cups of sugar. We're going to add 4 heaping tablespoons of cocoa. I always like to make them heaping because I feel like you can't have too much chocolate. And then you're going to add a half a cup of milk. Now you're going to bring this whole mixture to a boil, and once it gets to a boil, you're going to let it boil for 1 minute, and that's when you'll add the rest of the ingredients. You'll remove it from the heat, of course, too. Now I will say that we vary our peanut butter in this. So you can use regular peanut butter or you can use crunchy peanut butter. So we change it up. Sometimes we use crunchy, sometimes we use plain. It really adds some neat crunch to it with the crunchy. So if you like crunchy peanut butter, I definitely recommend you try that. This is what we used that night, was the crunchy peanut butter, and we really like it like that. Now, have y'all ever tried it with crunchy? Let me know in the comments if you have, because I'm not sure that's such a common alteration of this recipe or not. But once you get your peanut butter in there, then you're going to add in 3 cups of oatmeal and a tablespoon of vanilla. You're just going to make sure to mix those together well, and you got to kind of work fairly fast because it does start setting up pretty quickly. And you can do it, we actually do it a couple different ways. So you can scoop it out into like cookie shapes, and those are kind of handy, especially if you want to send them in lunches or anything like that. But my husband actually likes to make like a giant sheet pan of them and just break them apart after they've cooled. So we do that sometimes too. So we actually did both this night. I made some that were like cookie shaped, and then I also made part of it to just be like a big sheet of it. So, and he just breaks it up and puts it in a Ziploc bag. But these are so good. I'm sure most everybody's had them at some point in their life. I feel like that we even had them, I think, in school. I think I remember having them there. So, and they're so easy to come together. You don't have to bake anything, so it doesn't heat up the, the kitchen or anything or your house. And just a, really good sweet treat. It's also a good recipe for kids to help with, just since it's, they can scoop it out. There's lots of aspects of it they could definitely help with really easily, and I know kids always love getting involved in the kitchen. So let me know in the comments, have y'all had no-bake cookies? And if you have, do you enjoy those? Or what's your favorite cookie? What kind of cookie do you like the best? So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it so much. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I'd appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any yummy recipes. See you in the next one.